Hi, let's have a look at this question. You can see in the question we have vapors of phosphine gas. All right. So let me first tell you what phosphine gas is. So it is pH 3, and you can see the vapors are at a temperature of 27 degrees Celsius and a pressure of 3 bar. And what we have to calculate is the density of this gas. Very basic question, very interesting. Let me tell you how to solve. So basically what you have to do is, we know that from ideal gas equation, density of a gas is equals to pressure into molar mass of the gas divided by universal gas constant into temperature. All right, so this is the simple formula that you have to use in order to answer this question. All right, so let us put values one by one. So now you can see for pressure we have 3 bar. Yes, molar mass is not given, so let us calculate it. So now you can see in pH 3 for phosphorus it is 31, and for hydrogen it is 1 into 3, and that means a total of 34 grams per mole. So now you can see this is the value of molar mass of phosphine. All right, so let us put this value here. So it is 34, and then yes, the value of R, a very important point. All right, so let me tell you, whenever you have temperature in degree Celsius, pressure in bar, and volume in liters, then the value for R is 0.0831. Sorry, I told you temperature in degree Celsius. Let me clarify. The temperature has to be in Kelvin, volume has to be in liters, and pressure has to be in bars. Then the value for R is 0.0831. All right, so this is the value of R. So let's put this value 0.0831 into temperature. Since is given to us in degree Celsius, we have to first convert it into Kelvin. Now when you add a 273 to this value, you get the value in Kelvin, which is nothing but 300. So now upon solving this particular thing, what you will get? So what you will get is 4.09. Let me correct it. Yes, what you will get is 4.09 gram per liter. All right, and this is the value for density of this gas, which means the right answer to this question is option A. Hi, let's have a look at this question. The question is the molar heat capacity of water in equilibrium with its vapor at constant pressure is. So what we have to basically find out is the molar heat capacity of water at constant pressure when it is in equilibrium with its vapor. All right, so important thing that you have to understand here is, first of all, what is molar heat capacity? So basically molar heat capacity is the amount of heat supplied, and since we are talking about constant pressure here, so the molar heat capacity that we are defining is at constant pressure. All right, and it can be defined as the amount of heat required at constant pressure to raise the temperature of 1 mole of water, in this case, by 1 degree Celsius. All right, and the formula is CPM, or you can write it also as CMP, where the this small m stands for the molar heat capacity, and P means at constant pressure. All right, so this is just the representation, nothing much about it. So you can see the molar heat capacity at constant pressure for water can be given as uh, dH upon dt at constant pressure. All right, so this is the formula. So now one thing we know, that this delta H, or this dH, del H you can say. All right, so this del H here, this H is the enthalpy, and T represents the temperature, and this del represents a change in it. All right, so an instantaneous change, or you can say a very small change in the heat, and you can say a very small change in the temperature. Clear? So now you can see in this case, since the reaction is at equilibrium, not reaction in fact, since this process is at equilibrium, that is conversion of water to vapor is at equilibrium, we know that at equilibrium temperature is constant. That means this process must be undergoing at constant temperature. And if the temperature becomes constant, then this del T will tend to 0. And if it will approach 0, what will happen? You can see here the denominator is approaching 0, which means the overall value for molar heat capacity at constant pressure will approach infinity, isn't it? So that means the answer has to be infinity, and you can see it is given in option B. So option B is the right answer. Now let me tell you the practical aspect of it. All right, so just imagine, by definition we know that molar heat capacity is the amount of heat required to raise the temperature by 1 degree Celsius, isn't it? For 1 mole, obviously. So now you can see, since the process is at equilibrium, and we know that whenever water is converted into vapor and whenever the equilibrium establishes, then what happens is whatever is the amount of heat that you supply will be used in phase conversion. That means it will be used in conversion of water from liquid to the vapor form, isn't it? But it will not increase the temperature. And this is the reason why you can say upon supplying enormous amount of heat, there will be no change in temperature until unless the complete amount of water from liquid form converts into the vapor form. All right. And this is also one of the reasons to say that infinite amount of heat will be required. All right. And hence option B is the only answer. Hi, let's have a look at this question. The question is, you can see we have a weak acid with the pKa value of 4.5, and we have to find out the pOH of an aqueous buffered solution of this weak acid. Alright, and it is also given to us that in this aqueous buffered solution, the concentration of acid is equals to the concentration of salt. So very basic question based on the acidic buffer. So let me tell you, since here we are provided with the solution which is an acidic buffer solution, we have to use Henderson-Hasselbalch equation to find out the pH first of all. So let me tell you the Henderson-Hasselbalch equation. So according to this equation, pH of a buffered solution is equals to pKa plus log of concentration of salt divided by concentration of acid. Now we just have to put the values into this equation, and thereby we end up in getting the pH value. Alright, from which we will later on calculate the pOH. So let's see how to do. So since salt concentration is equals to acid, this will cancel and we get log 1 here. And we know that log 1 is 0, which means pH is equals to pKa, which is equals to 4.5. Now also we know that at 298 Kelvin, yes, one important thing, although this value of temperature is not mentioned to you in the question, but then whenever you find such a question wherein temperature value is not given, you should assume it to be equals to 298 Kelvin. All right, especially for these kind of questions. So now you can see at 298 Kelvin, we know that pH plus pOH is equals to 14. Therefore, pOH will be equals to 14 minus 4.5, which is the value for pH. And when you solve it, what you will get is 9.5. So this 9.5 is the answer for the question. So let us now match with the options. You can see option A is 4.5, which is not correct. Option B is 2.5, again not correct. Option C is 9.5, exactly the right answer. And option D is 7, which is not right. So clearly you can see the right answer to this question is option C. Hi, let's have a look at this question, and you can see in the question we have to find out the correct order for heat of hydrogenation of the compounds given to us. Alright, correct order for heat of hydrogenation. Very simple question. Let us see how to answer. So first of all, you should understand that the heat of hydrogenation depends on two factors. All right, the first and the you can say most important or dominant factor is the number of pi bonds. Clear? That is, more is the number of pi bonds in a molecule, more will be the heat of hydrogenation. Clear? And the second factor is it is inversely proportional to stability of the molecule. Clear? That is, more is the stability of molecule, less will be the heat of hydrogenation. All right, so let us use these two you can say factors in order to answer this question. All right, so let us use these two factors to answer the question. And you can say out of molecule 1, 2 and 3, molecule 3 contains 2 pi bond, whereas molecule 1 and 2 contains 1 pi bond each, which clearly tells us that the heat of hydrogenation will be maximum for molecule 3 as it contains more number of pi bonds. Now let us compare between first and second, and obviously since they contain same number of pi bonds, we have to compare with the help of stability, isn't it? So let us look for the stability of these molecules. Now you can see both are alkenes, in fact both are cycloalkenes, and whenever we have the alkene kind of you can say compound, then we have to look for the stability with the help of hyperconjugation effect. isn't it? So for hyperconjugation, we know that we have to count the number of alpha hydrogens. Now the molecule with more number of alpha hydrogens will have more number of hyperconjugating structures and thereby more stability, isn't it? So let us count the number of alpha hydrogens. So you can see in molecule 1 we have 3 alpha hydrogens here, 3 here, 6, then 2 alpha hydrogens here, that means 8, and 2 here, which means a total of how many? Yes, a total of 10 alpha hydrogens. So in molecule number 1 we have total of 10 alpha hydrogens. Let's now count in molecule number 2. So now you can see in molecule number 2 we have 2 alpha hydrogens here, and we have 2 alpha hydrogens here, which means a total of just 4 alpha hydrogens. Clear? So this clearly tells us that molecule 1 is more stable with respect to molecule 2, which means the heat of hydrogenation of molecule 2 will be more than that of molecule 1, and hence the right order will be third will have the maximum heat of hydrogenation, followed by which is second, and then the least is for first. Let's now match with the options. You can see option A is wrong, option B is precisely the one that we just calculated, and option C is again wrong, and option D is also wrong. All right, so only option B is the right answer. Hi, let's have a look at this question. The question is, which of these is the correct order for reactivity of alkene towards electrophilic addition? All right, so here we are talking about electrophilic addition. Very basic question. Let us see how to answer. So first thing that you have to understand is, let us say we have an alkene, all right, with R group attached to it, or in fact in place of R, let's call it as a Z group. That can be anything. All right, so now this is the alkene that we have. Clear? And to this alkene, an electrophile is trying to attack. All right, so on this alkene, an electrophile is trying to attack. Clear? And the reaction that we are talking about here is electrophilic addition. Clear? Which means the first attack will be made by the electrophile about this pi bond. Clear? Now the question arises, why about pi bond only? So it is because it is the pi bond wherein the pi electron clouds are present, and these pi electron clouds can be easily polarized by the electrophiles, thereby you can say satisfying their thirst for electron. Clear? So now you can see, if we have this Z group which is electron donating, then what it will do is it will donate electron, thereby it will basically make this pi electron cloud even more rich in electrons. Clear? Or in place of saying this, you can simply say, if this group is an electron donating group, then it will make this molecule a more electron rich molecule, and in such a case it will be easy for electrophile to attack. Why? Because electrophile needs electrons, and if something very rich in electron is present nearby, obviously it will be you can say a jackpot for the electrophile, isn't it? So what we have to look for is whether this Z is electron donating or it is electron withdrawing. If it withdraws electron, it will obviously decrease the electron density, and hence the electrophile will find it difficult to attack on such a molecule. Clear? So this is what we have to look for. So now you can see in option A, you can see we have this NO2 group attached with the alkene, isn't it? So now you can see with this CH2 double bond CH, this NO2 group is attached. Now this NO2 group actually acts as an electron withdrawing group due to minus M effect, as well as it acts as an electron withdrawing group due to minus I effect. And you can see, since all in all it is an electron withdrawing group, the tendency of electrophile to attack on such a system, or you can simply say the reactivity of such an alkene towards the electrophilic addition will be less. Clear? And now comparing it with CH2 double bond CHOCH3. So here what happens is, in this OCH3, the oxygen carries lone pair of electron, which it can donate through the mesomerism effect. All right, towards this you can say system, or towards the alkene system, which means it will act as an electron donating group due to plus M effect. And simultaneously, since oxygen is more electronegative than carbon, it will pull electrons across the sigma bond towards it through minus I effect. But since mesomerism is dominant over inductive, we will mainly consider this group as an electron donating group, which means this group will increase the electron density of this particular system. All right, and hence electrophile will feel easy to attack on it, and so it will be more reactive towards electrophilic addition. And which means this symbol here has to be just you can say reverse. It should be just reversed, isn't it? This methoxy group should be more reactive than the nitro, so which means this option is not right, because the symbol is not correctly placed. So now you can see in option B we have again nitro, which we know now is in electron withdrawing group. And in the you can say second molecule, we have two nitro groups, which means uh, a very strong electron withdrawing effect is operative in case of molecule 2. So obviously we can say that this time out of these two, the one which is more reactive is the one which contains less number of nitro group, which means this option is also wrong, isn't it? So now moving to option C, we have ethene and propene. Let's draw the structure first. So you can see this is ethene, and now in propene we have a CH3 group present. All right. So now you can see this CH3 group will act as an electron donating group. Clear? It will act as an electron donating group due to hyperconjugation effect as well as due to inductive effect. All right, plus I group. So due to hyperconjugation, if it is donating, that means it is increasing the electron density, and hence electrophile will feel easy to attack on the system. But since the symbol is wrongly placed, this is also not correct, which means only option D is the answer, isn't it? But let us look for it. Let us see the explanation. Now you can see in option D we have this OCH3 group, which we already know is an electron donating group, and we have this OH group here. So let us see what OH group will do. Now you can see, since this OH group is not present alternate to the pi bond, which means it will not participate in conjugation, or you can say the electrons on the oxygen will not be involved into conjugation. Clear? Or you can say it will not be involved into mesomerism, and hence this OH group will serve as an electron withdrawing group due to minus I effect. Why? Because we know that the oxygen is more electronegative than carbon, so it will definitely pull the sigma electron density towards it, and this is called as inductive effect. And since it is withdrawing, therefore the effect is called as minus I effect for OH group. Clear? And hence we can say this time the symbol is correctly placed. So obviously option D is the right answer to this question.